The document suggests to us a countercultural perspective. I've already mentioned to you the challenge that individualism is in our society and in our church. We have so many choices, so many options, that in a certain sense my world can be tailored to myself. The upshot of that, of course, is that it pushes people away from others, pushes them towards a disposition and an attitude of self-seeking. Not that everyone falls prey to this, of course, but there is a risk, there is a danger. And the danger and the risk in my life, and similarly in the church, is that I am accountable only to myself and not to others, not to God. I think that one of the great challenges, as I mentioned, in these recent days with the scandals and the accounting difficulties and the stock market difficulties, is that we are spending so much time focusing on ourselves that we don't realize that everything we do touches and impinges upon others. And so I think this document is a very strong and compelling argument against the privatization of my life, my reality. The document, I believe, calls for personal reflection and personal decisions. If you read the Gospel of Matthew and Mark and focus on what Matthew and Mark are saying in the individual, in their particular Greek text, Jesus says that you are to take up the cross. But the way in which he describes it is that the taking up the cross is something that is a once and for all activity, a once and for all decision. I think the Gospel of Luke presents this challenge to us in a different way. Where Luke, in this handing on the saying of Jesus, as that you are, if you're going to be a follower of mine, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and follow me. I think this more accurately grasps and captures the challenge to be a follower of Jesus day by day. We have to see that the call, while it is once and for all for most of us, has implications for us to keep on making decisions. Once one is caught up in this dynamic of being in love with God and following Jesus, there is no end to it. In Matthew 5:48, the closing verse of the 5th chapter of the first part of the Gospel Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, you must be perfect as your Heavenly Father is perfect. And if you look at what perfect means from the context, it tells us that God is always going out of himself to give. God causes the rain to fall on good and bad alike, causes the sun to shine on evil and good. God doesn't wait to see what the response is going to be. God simply gives. God is constantly pouring out his goodness. And Jesus invites us to join God in that disposition. Yesterday we had some very powerful texts from the book of Exodus and the Gospel of Matthew. In the text of Exodus, God says, you know, if you love me, you're seeking to obey me, you need to love the poor. You need to love your neighbor. You need to be able to treat that person in a way as your friend, as your other self. And Jesus summarizes the gospel, the law, and the prophets by saying, you must not only love God with all your mind and heart and soul and strength, your total being, but love your neighbor as yourself. The bishop's pastoral letter is very good in that it moves out from intra-church issues to touch on issues like ecumenism, to touch on issues of social justice, to touch on concern not just for my parish, which is the natural inclination, the community that's closest to me, but to identify with the diocese, and then beyond that, with the universal church. If you know anything about Jesuit spirituality, or Ignatian vision of life, one of the things St. Ignatius often said is, it's important for you, the Jesuit, and others who want to take up the challenge, to pause each day, twice a day if possible, and examine, where is the Lord in my life today? What is he calling me to? What is he asking of me? How is he leading me to be the kind of person I want to be deep down at the core of my being? That's what I mean by a constant set of personal reflections and decisions. Not once and for all, although it begins there, but day by day.
Your Grace, you have 4 minutes.
The call also touches every aspect of our life. And I'm going to just mention one, and this is where I believe the Holy Father invites us to see our following of Jesus as co-redeeming. And that is that I'm called to give everything, including my sufferings, including the pain, including the setbacks of my life. I do that because I realize that even the suffering, even the pain, even the setback is God's gift. Stewardship is rooted in gratitude. It's rooted in the principle that all I have is God's gift. And I'm going to close with just a couple of references to Ignatian spirituality. You'll have to figure out and fill in the rest of those pages on your own. Or come back tomorrow when I do it in French and maybe I'll speak faster. In the spiritual exercises, Ignatius says this: when you begin an exercise of prayer, go and ask God for what it is that you want. And strive with everything in your being, your mind, your heart, your spirit, to obtain that gift. And one of the things you discover as you're praying with God for 30 days in the spiritual exercises is that it's not mine to find the grace and to get the grace. There will be days when I go and I strive with might and main to feel sorrow for my sins, and I can't feel anything. To feel compassion for Jesus and his passion, and I feel nothing. One day, he gives it to me. And so, Ignatius doesn't say I shouldn't strive, I shouldn't try. Yes, you can do it, but realize that in the striving, it's not mine to obtain the graces. It's not mine to save myself. It's not mine to become who I want to be and who I'm called to be. All of it is God's gift. And then he says, at the very end of the exercises, in a beautiful contemplation called the Contemplation to Obtain Divine Love, to find God in everything, is to realize that love is proven more in deeds than in words, and that love involves a mutual exchange between the beloved and the lover. And if we want to, we can see that all descends from God. There's a beautiful fourth Eucharistic prayer that praises God, from whom, the Father of lights, from whom all good things descend. When one is rooted in that sense of gratitude, then one can explore and look and say, what return must I make to the Lord for all that he's given to me? And that fundamental principle of gratitude, of thanksgiving, is the basis of stewardship. I think I'll pause right now and thank you very much and ask if there are any questions.